time. Like this class always gets like the best. Like I feel like the best. All right, so we've talked about motivation. Okay, now we got to talk about our emotions. Okay, and today we are going to talk about 4 of the 5 theories regarding emotion. Actually, no, 3 of the 4 theories regarding emotion. Okay, there's a 4th one that, to be honest, I don't say this. Oh, yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with most of them, with pretty much all the material in this class. But this new 4th theory of emotion, I don't particularly understand it all that well yet. So I need to have more time to be able to understand it better before I can more effectively teach it. So we're going to save that until next class. All right, but emotion. All right. Anybody ever watched Arrested Development? No, not even you, Jonah. You're usually the one who. Arrested Development's great. I don't know what it's on. It was confusing. It is kind of a confusing show. It's very, very goofy, and like it's not your personal thing. Oh, I love her. I think Arrested Development's hilarious. But you're right. It's a very sort of niche humor. Okay. Seen something that doesn't really work. Yeah, no, you're right. It is one of those shows that you kind of you gotta like watch it from the beginning. You can't just like jump into the middle of it. The first 2 seasons are great. Season 3 and 4 are not great. So there are a lot of arguments about emotion, okay, and what exactly it is. Okay, is how do we experience emotion? Is emotion something that comes from a physiological change? Do we have a physiological change in our body? And then from that physiological change, we experience an emotion? Is it something that do we experience the emotion, the actual conscious emotion, and the physiological change at the same time? Do we experience the physiological change, decide how we're going to feel about it, and then experience the emotion? Okay, those are kind of the big arguments when it comes to emotion. What kind of is the process of this happening? Everybody's seen Get Out, haven't they? Okay, Get Out's great. Yeah. This is just a random thing, but you all know, like, they've found that people that cussing is actually good for it helps us actually cope with our emotions. Like people who cuss tend to cope with their emotions better. I'm always trying to find justification for how bad my language is. So there we go. All right, so emotion itself refers to kind of a mix of 3 different things. Physiological arousal, okay, meaning a sympathetic reaction. Like physiological change is like your heart beating fast. Okay. Your expressive behavior, how you act. If somebody scares you and you're ah, okay, that's an expressive okay, that's an expressive behavior. And then our conscious experience of it. Okay. If somebody scares you, you jump and then you realize it's not a threat. So you start laughing afterwards. All right. That is your interpretation of what. Why do they cry after you scare them? Because it's little kids don't do well. Like it's just such a shock to them, and they don't recognize that necessarily that there's not a threat, and they don't know when their heart starts pounding like that. Their only reaction is to cry. All right, because they don't necessarily recognize like be like, oh, well, that's not a threat. That was kind of funny. They don't find that funny. So we are going to talk about three theories today, two of which are what are called historical theories that are not really considered to be legitimate anymore. Now, I know some of you are probably like, why the hell do we learn these things that aren't legitimate? It's just part of, we got to understand where psychology comes from. Just like psychoanalysis, psychoanalytic perspective is not really legitimate anymore, but we still got to learn about it because it's historical. So there was an original theory called common sense theory, but you don't need to know about that. That one's so old that we don't even focus on that one. But in the late 1800s, okay, there comes a theory of emotion that becomes known as James Lange theory. Okay, was put forth by William James and Carl Lange. Now, where have we heard the name William James before? He was like day 2 of this class. Anybody remember what he is associated with? Founder of an early field of psychology. Functionalism. Yep. Okay, good. All right. What James Lange theory says is that for us to experience an emotion, there has to be some sort of environmental stimulus that we have to react to. So let's say a bear. A bear's coming right at you. Okay. So environmental stimulus is like something in the environment that you're reacting to. What this theory says is this environmental stimulus, whatever it is, causes a specific physiological change in your body. Bear's coming towards you, your heart starts beating, and then because your heart is beating fast, okay, you then experience the emotion of fear. So basically it says like heart beating fast equals fear. Okay, so thing in the environment, physiological change, emotion. Now, does anybody just right off the bat see an issue with this theory? What problem do we have when we say a specific emotion is associated with a specific physiological change? All right, okay, all right, Jonah, that's correct. Yep, Evan, that's correct. Yeah. Does your heart beating always mean that you're afraid? Your heart beating fast always mean that you're afraid? No. Maybe your heart's beating fast because the girl that you have a crush on just came up and asked you if you can come over and help her study tonight. Okay. And you're like, and now your heart's beating fast because you're nervous and excited. Right. So James Lange theory says that a specific emotion is associated with a specific physiological change. But as we know, that is not the case. Physiological changes can mean a lot, can be associated with a lot of different emotions. But just remember, this one is linear, meaning it is like boom, boom, boom. It is step by step, and it has basically been proven incorrect. There is a little bit of evidence for James Lange that we'll actually talk about next class. Has anybody in here ever been told, smile, you'll feel better? Just, if you smile more, you'll just feel better. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Kind of annoying, right? Yeah. Switzer used to go around and like specifically tell girls, hey, like, you should smile more. You look a lot better if you smiled more, which I can tell you guys, if you're a guy and you like, don't ever say that to a girl. Okay. That is not going to go well. All right. But there is actually truth, because it's just not to tell, like, you tell a girl like, hey, you'd be so much pretty if you smiled more. Like, that's just not. And the girl explain why that's not good. Yeah, tell your mom that and see what she does. Yeah. Okay. But there is truth to the idea that smiling makes us feel happier. Okay. And frowning, they have found that when we smile, we actually tend to feel happier. Now, they don't know if it's the muscles that cause the change or if it's the expectation when we're like, I'm smiling, must be happy. Okay. But they don't know, but it could be evidence. It's called the facial feedback effect. All right. So, as we say, pounding heart can mean a lot of different things. Around that same time, there's another theory that comes out that basically says that James Long is full of shit. Okay, that no, it's not linear. That actually the emotion and the physiological change happen at the same time. They happen simultaneously. That would be a key word if you got a question about this. They happen simultaneously and they happen independently of one another. Basically, if we see a car coming towards us, we experience the cognitive emotion of fear, and then we also experience our heart beating fast. But the two of them, it's not like the chicken or the egg. It's not like one causes the other. They happen at the same time. Okay, because of that's a terrible brain. Because of that structure, the thalamus. There's the thalamus here. If you see a car coming towards you, all right, signal is sent down to the autonomic nervous system and then also up to the cortex. There is a little bit of evidence for this. Who in here, has anybody in here ever been pulled over? This class is really young. You've been in the car. Okay. Well, mostly all get pulled over at some point. And you'll notice like when you get pulled over, like you see the flashing lights, and it does kind of feel like it happens at the same, like you're like, oh shit. And then at the same time, like your heart starts beating faster and faster. Okay. Um, Cannon kind of explains like automatic emotions like that, but the problem with it is that if the two are independent of one another, then you would expect that the extent to which your heart is beating, or at least, or that you experience the physiological change, wouldn't impact the emotion, when in fact they have found that it does. That people who have upper spine injuries and are paralyzed, like from the neck down, don't experience emotions quite as strongly as people who are not paralyzed, because they can't necessarily feel the physiological change in their body. They have fear, sadness, or whatever up here, but they don't feel it in their body, and they say that they don't report it feeling at the emotion being as strong. So Cannon The two happen at the same time and roughly independent of one another. Oh, shit. So it's basically like the brain, and we got emotional coming up to the cortex, and then physical coming down to the body. Okay. All right, so sorry, I was reading something. A way for you to remember this, and this might help some of you, is if you think two cannons firing at the same time. We got the physiological change and the emotion going off at the same time. All right, so those are the two historical theories that are a little bit, that have some aspects of truth to them, but for the most part have been proven incorrect. Are there any questions there? Just make sure that you know the order that things happen. Those will be the key words in it. All right, last one, and one that is legitimate. And I really like this theory. I think this theory is very cool. All right, deals a lot with top-down processing and whatnot. What is called Schachter-Singer two-factor theory, or if you want to get a little bit rhymey with it, we call it Schachter two-factor. Okay, that'd be his rap name. All right. Schachter-Singer, basically what it does is it takes James Lange, all right, environmental stimulus, and then physiological arousal. Okay. But instead of saying that physiological arousal causes a specific emotion, what this theory says is that when we experience a physiological change, we apply what is called a cognitive label to it. Essentially, whatever the physiological change that is happening in us at any time, our heart beating, sweating, whatnot, essentially, this cognitive label is kind of choosing the best possible option, basically being like why is my heart beating? Oh, I must be feeling this. And then you put that and you say, all right, that is the emotion that I am having with it. There are two factors that go into emotion. The physiological change is one, but then the cognitive label is two. Basically, emotion requires conscious interpretation of physical changes. Everybody following that? Okay. So, for instance, all right, this example is going to sound ridiculous, but it is actually true. We've done research on this. Can I get cameras on, please, guys? I don't know why there's 6 of you all with them off. Let's say that, Valentine's Day was this, okay. All right, makes a lot of sense. I can always tell when I'm really anxious because it starts shaking in my hands or stomach. But that could be you'd be like, oh, my hands and stomach are shaking. I must be anxious. Okay. Um, this past Sunday was Valentine's Day. I know most of y'all in here are a bunch of nerds, so you didn't do anything. Okay, I didn't either. And but let's say that you got your boyfriend or girlfriend coming over, and you want to make sure that you feel when they come over, you want to feel um, really, really strong emotion for them. You want to be like, it's Valentine's Day. I got to feel really strong emotion for this person. What might you want to do right before they come over so that you might feel stronger emotion than normal? Anybody have a guess? If it's going off Schachter Singer, if we apply a cognitive label to whatever physiological change we are having, right, and you want to feel really strong emotion for someone, what might be something good to do? I'm talking about right when they come over. All right. Yes. Okay, Roger, that is correct. Okay. Get your heart rate up. Okay. Almost get hit by a car to get the, yeah, all right, however you got to do it. All right, whether you're getting hit by a car, or you're doing some push-ups, or you're running right beforehand. But Schachter Singer says that, if you see your boyfriend or girlfriend right after a workout, you might feel stronger emotions for them than if you see them right after, like, watching like a really sad movie. Okay, because of the different physiological arousal. When we see them and we're like, oh, my heart's beating really fast, that must be attraction. And we're going to watch a quick video. This is called the Aaron-Bridge study, and it backs up what I just said. It's by a guy named George Aaron, who's done a lot of research on emotion. He's actually the one that came up with. You all ever heard of like the 30 questions to ask somebody if you want to like build a strong relationship or build whatever? You all ever heard of that before? It was popular like a couple of years ago. It's kind of weird. You like look into each other's eyes and ask questions, and it seems very awkward to me. But all right, it's called the Aaron-Bridge study, and I think it's very cool. I think.
High suspension bridge on a windy day is just the place to put Art Aaron's theory to the test that danger can provoke passion.
We had an attractive young woman stand on this scary bridge, and every time a young man would walk across by himself, she would stop him and say, "Excuse me."
I'm doing an experiment for my psychology class on the effects of exposure to scenic attractions on creative expression. Would you mind filling out this questionnaire for me, please? Doesn't take.
Almost all of the men agreed to do it. After all, it was an attractive woman asking a man to do something. They didn't want to admit they were scared.
And then I have a picture for you to look at. And I'd like for you to write a brief dramatic story based on this photograph.
So the man would write the story, and when he was done, she'd say,
"Thank you. I appreciate your time. And I don't have a whole lot of time now, but I'd love to explain the experiment in more detail when I do have more time. So I'm going to give you my number. You can feel free to call me. It's at my hotel."
Okay. So she would write her name and phone number on the edge of her little sheet, tear it off, and hand it to her. Great.
My name's Linda, so
Okay.
I hope you phone me.
Okay, Linda. She stopped 20 men on the scary bridge, and then she stopped another 20 men on another bridge. It was a big, heavy, safe bridge, not very scary at all.
I am doing a project for my psychology class on the effects of exposure to scenic.
Of the men who met her on the scary bridge, many more phoned her that night than the ones who met her on the safe bridge. The other thing we did is we looked at the stories they wrote. Far more romantic and sexual content when they met the woman on the scary bridge.
She's embarrassed because her boyfriend wants to marry her.
Than when they met the very same woman on the safe bridge.
I think this woman is a little embarrassed about something that's really not that important at all.
Aaron believes that when our heart is pounding in our chest, we unconsciously look for the most attractive explanation. And And if an attractive person of the right sex is standing by, then we're happy to assume we've fallen in love.
All right, so there you go. All right, are there any questions about that? All right, there's one other thing that goes along, with this is, not only do we put a cognitive label on it, but a lot of times we do what's called cognitive appraisal, which is sort of we appraise the situation, meaning look it over and appraise how we are feeling. All right, so, if you're on a roller coaster going 60 miles an hour and going straight down, your heart's going to be pounding the same as if you were in a car going off a cliff at 60 miles an hour. Okay, but the appraisal of it is going to be totally different. On the roller coaster, you're thinking, oh, my heart's pounding, I'm having fun. In a car going off the cliff, you're saying, oh, my heart's pounding, shit, we just flew off a cliff. Okay, and so it's same experience, but two different interpretations of it. I have toddlers falling on here, which is an example of this. Anybody know when a toddler like falls or falls down the steps or something like that, what is the first thing that they do? Yeah. Okay. They look around them to see what other people's reactions are. Right. And if their mother's like, ah, then they're going to start crying because they're like, oh shit, something's wrong. But if their mother's like, get up, kid, you're fine. They're like, all right, I guess I'm fine. Okay. And they just get up and they're like, yeah, that's cognitive appraisal. Can anybody think of any other examples of two-factor theory? Because we do this all like this. This is like how we experience emotions. There's one that somebody last class actually got it. Deals with a Disney movie, actually. Yeah, I mean, when you make a mistake in sports and then look at your coach, but just what might be, anybody think of another example of two-factor where we put the cognitive label on it, kind of decide how we are going to feel, what our emotions should be with something? Eating food? I mean, that's just, no, Rajab, I don't think I'm not sure if you're grasping the whole, yes, okay, yeah, tears of joy, okay. Yeah, anybody know what Stockholm Syndrome is? Okay, what's Stockholm Syndrome and why might Stockholm Syndrome be an example of two-factor theory? Anyone? Well, it's when somebody falls in love with somebody who's holding them hostage, but like Beauty and the Beast, but it's not necessarily because they're in love with you, but why might somebody fall in love with somebody who is holding them hostage? There. Confusing fear with, yeah, it's like one of those things where our body fights against being afraid. Like we can't be afraid for a long time. And so fear and love kind of kind of feel the same sometimes. And so instead of thinking, oh, I'm feeling this because I'm afraid, they switch it and they say, oh, I'm feeling this because I'm in love with this person. Okay. It is because it's easier to cope with. It's called a reaction formation, but it is also two-factor. All right. Are there any questions about two-factor? All right, so for asynchronous, all I want for you to do is just watch up to 8:48 on this crash course. And all this stuff is on your PowerPoint. So if you need to supplement notes or whatnot, you can like add some stuff. But really, all you got to know is really what's on the PowerPoint. Okay, there's not like really extra information.